Yeah. I mean, I started talking about this years ago, and it's it's fun because people are finally catching up. I wish I would have written down more of the things I was saying, but people are getting the gist of it, and they're getting there. Everyone is talking about Bitcoin mining, um, counterbalancing renewable energies. This was actually one of the original visions when we actually founded Titan, and when we started talking about Titan in late 2017, early 2018, was this idea of accessibility to hash rate and the ability to counterbalance renewable energy grids with mining. And it's all from this premise of load following. So not a lot of people know, but I have a background in nuclear power. My dad worked at a nuclear power plant for like 35 years, and then I ended up working at the same nuclear power plant for a little while, and just learning about the aspects of the power grid, load following, and how we actually keep these grids balanced was really, really interesting and a little concerning at the same time. We actually have we have to keep our grid balanced within, I believe it's 0.05 hertz. So here in America, we stay at 60 hertz. If we go over, if we go under on our power supply, it's going to raise or lower the frequency on the grid, which is when you start having blackouts. When your alternating current drops or goes under 60 hertz or goes above 60 hertz within this fault tolerance, then you start breaking things. So essentially, we have to keep the grid balanced, and you can only produce electricity when you're using it, right? There's not this idea of, it's not like pumping gas where the gas is just sitting there waiting for it to come out of the tube, and all you have to do is press the handle. The concept is you can only pump gas if there is a car on the other end of the hose with an empty gas tank or room in the gas tank. It doesn't matter if you hold the handle down or whatever. When it comes to electricity, the only way electricity will flow is if there's a load. That's just the premise of the way a circuit works. Now, when we apply that to renewables, the problem with renewables is they are always on. They are always ready to produce electricity. So if they're connected to a grid, they will always push electricity onto a grid. And when you push more electricity onto a grid than you have load, that's when you start raising the frequency of the grid, and that's when you start breaking things, and that's when you get blackouts. So you actually have to do what's called load following. You have to match your production with how much load you need. Now, the problem that we run into with renewables is if you have a desert full of solar panels to match the load of Palm Springs in the middle of summer when it's really hot and everyone's running the AC units, the load's really high, so you're going to build enough solar panels to match the high load. Well, now when you go into winter, when no one's running their AC units and it's actually a very nice climate, well, you still have all these solar panels sitting in the sun producing electricity as though it was full load, and they actually have to protect the power grid from those solar panels. So you either start closing the circuit to disconnect the solar panels in order to try to do load following, which is very, very difficult to do with renewables, or you have to offload that electricity somewhere else. So in California, what we've been doing is actually sending our electricity to Arizona. So Arizona has a nuclear power plant, and a nuclear power plant or a coal power plant or a natural gas power plant can actually ramp up or ramp down production based on load. So if they have a bunch of solar power coming in from California, they actually ramp down their production so they can take the excess production from the California grid. They help us balance our grid. Now, in times of high load in California, we don't have enough renewables to cover it. We'll actually purchase electricity back from Arizona, and they'll ramp up their production in their nuclear power plant. So there's certain types of production that can be ramped up or ramped down very quickly, and there's types of production that can't be ramped up and ramped down very quickly, and those are renewables. So with that in mind, the premise is you build mining facilities to take up 100% of the load of any renewable grid. And now you can actually ramp up or ramp down your load. So rather than doing load following, you do production following. which is only possible when you have a consistent load that can be ramped up or ramped down. Historically, we've never had this type of thing before because it just seemed like wasting electricity. Now we actually have a use for that electricity. It's actually backing transaction processing on these crypto networks. So that was a very abridged version of a longer talk, but essentially moving forward, the biggest use of mining and proof of work networks is not burning electricity to get coins. It's actually counterbalancing grids and translating electricity into hash power. And then now we can actually use hash power as a global decentralized commodity rather than electricity, which is a localized, centralized commodity.
So what would that look like if it were integrated? Would it look like, the already existing renewable energy, farms and facilities would just hook up with all these professional miners and just feed them all this excess constant energy that they have? Or what would it look like in application?
Yeah. So we'll see, we already see this. So Core Scientific and a few other larger miners are actually partnering with the local power producers in an agreement, basically saying, you give us cheap electricity and we'll help you balance your grid. And this actually allows power producers to start increasing their production, which is more profit for them because they're generating more of the product they sell. And then Core Scientific or another miner gets an amazing deal on electricity for offering a service for counterbalancing the grid. Now, the downside to some of these miners doing this is they don't have 100% profitability from their machines because they're not running full bore 100% of the time. But at the end of the day, when you actually do the profitability calcs with the savings on the electricity cost, it's actually a pretty good deal. You have money printing machines that will start printing money at any point you plug them in. It's hard to lose on that one.